Infinite renewals. And on the build buy or something else, we do all of three of those or help out our customers with all of those, whether it's just strategy or doing all the builds. So it really, classic CS, it depends, but some people's situations are totally different than others, and you just sort of have to apply the lens to that one. So the answer is yes.
Team build and buy, is that right?
We have some people who should only buy because they don't have the staff, and they
Okay.
just need to adopt a platform and go from there. And we've got some people who do been mandated that they have to go build something and do stuff. And then there's the hybrid role where they have a platform out there, and it's
Mhm.
just smart to build some agents on top of that, customized to their own workflows and with the way that they run their business. So absolutely, all three of those.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jeff. I look forward to unpacking more of that with you through this panel. Josh, why don't you go next?
Great. Hello, everybody. I'm Josh Actor, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Go-to-Market Development at Gainsight. As Gemma mentioned, I was formerly founder and CEO of Update AI, and CS Angels were our most esteemed investor. So thank you, Gemma, and to all the angels out there. And I'm not just saying that. And I am on team buy and build on top and Lucky Charms. The icebreaker was your favorite childhood cereal, no?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
But good to know, Lucky Charms. You can get protein powered Lucky Charms, which is
Doesn't
uh,
sound as tasty at all.
You need a
yeah.
lot more milk in that one. Really dries up
You
fast.
should give them a go. Give them a go.
Jeff, what was
Um,
yours? It was definitely like Cocoa Puffs or something.
Oh, we like those variety boxes. You got those smaller ones, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah,
really
definitely in the sugary elements like you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
love it. Love it. Awesome. Sherry's asking that the icebreaker should be what is Jeff's favorite Creed song?
I mean, it's always higher. It's higher is just. I mean, it's the song that makes Instagram alive for me. So yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Chad, why don't you follow on? What's your favorite Creed song as you introduce yourself and tell
Oh
us
my
whether you're
gosh.
team build, buy, or something else?
Yes, because I listen to Creed. I was gonna say higher. I don't even know other songs that does
Freedom
he
by
actually sing any
Sacrifice.
other songs?
Should have
Okay.
been dead on a Sunday morning. I'm actually not a Creed fan. This is why it's so funny to Sherry. But like, yes. So it's a. Anyways, keep
All
going.
right, I'll go next. My name's Chad Hornfeld. Hey everyone. I'm the head of customer success here at Avoca. And in terms of build or buy, I'm more on the building right now, but I'm definitely a mix as well, like Josh.
Awesome. Thanks so
And
much.
I ate healthy cereals when I was growing up, so that was my mom forced me to. So good mom.
Weetabix. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
Chad, we're
cream of
gonna
wheat.
get it. Chad, I think you're being more diplomatic than you actually believe. So let's get into that later.
Okay.
Love that. And last but not least, Graham.
Hi, everyone. Graham Gill, Chief Customer Officer and General Manager at Recursive, East Coast of the US. Definitely a Cheerios guy. Unfortunately, I understand the inside joke on the Creed thing. I will never recognize them as a band. So I actually share a lot of the commonalities with the fellow panelists. I'm actually somewhere in the middle. Many years ago, because I'm cheap, as Josh knows, I like to build as much as I can. But I actually don't think that every problem, every company can like build everything, and I don't think every problem can be solved with just another piece of software. Taking kind of Jeff's point to the next level, I think about it in three ways. It's you build the capabilities, I'm sorry, you buy the capabilities you need, you build the capabilities for your unique company, and if you do build, please, please, please make sure you have governance around it. We can unpack that later on, but lack of governance is really starting to creep its way into many organizations as they're going down this build versus buy. Great to see everyone. Looking forward to this.
Great points, Graham. Appreciate it. And with arms wide open, let's involve our audience in this discussion. We're going to kick off a quick poll before we jump into the panel itself. So the poll is going to ask you to answer what best described your org's AI strategy in CS. It is a single choice answer, so choose the one that resonates best with where your organization is today. And we've got almost half of the people who've answered the
Gemma,
poll.
didn't
Give
we
it a few
discuss
seconds.
before, didn't we discuss adding show as an option here?
Wouldn't that be the first one though?
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm going to have to cut that out of our YouTube video. Otherwise, the
No,
video will be
no.
taken down and reported.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm usually to blame for these things.
It's gonna get an
I wonder
explicit
if I can
rating
just
like
add a little
NWA.
bleep. If I can add a little bleep out to it, maybe that will help. Alrighty, I think we've had most of the audience participate in the poll. I'll give you 3 more seconds. And I'm ending the poll and I'm going to share the results now. So the results show 32% say that what best describes their org's AI strategy in customer success is individuals using AI ad hoc with no team strategy. 32% also say building custom team tools and integrations. And 25% say that they're enhancing existing CSPs and CRMs. And then we have 11% who are still exploring and evaluating options. So really interesting feedback there. I think it shows that we are truly at a crossroads in our profession and there is no right or wrong path to go down. But it's helpful if you can gain as much knowledge to make the right pivots that you need to along the way. So with that, let's go into our first question. I would like to know, Jeff, when does building custom tools make sense?
Yeah, so I've seen this in a few different reasons why. And soon to be on a release podcast with my friend Ashley. Some people get board mandated. Like, listen, that's too much of a line item expense. We believe in X, Y, and Z. And they had a very smart technical team. I think there's this easy argument to win when you say it's either a platform or 50 people building stuff, and it's somewhere sometimes in the middle. Where I've seen two things that work really well. You've got startups who are on spreadsheets and they can kind of just build their own thing and it's not going to cause too much damage. And obviously the things with the governance and things that Graham was mentioning, it's not as much of an issue at the smaller ones. I've seen a lot of mid-size. When I say mid-size, we're talking 25 to 80 million in revenue or something like that, where they have good tech teams, they've got good DevOps teams, and they go through and they create requirements or create little prototypes and then hand it over for somebody to build and deploy with all of the systems. And I've built stuff out like that too, where they just asked us for the Python files and they just deployed it into their system. I just don't want to get too tech, but like their system, and everything was fine. But if you don't have that, it can get really dangerous. You can really expose all of your customer information online. So you need to go with the strategy that your organization maps to. I don't want to keep going. I want to let other people say, but like I'm really just worried about people building stuff and exposing it outside. And just it's really good to partner up with your CTO and to say, hey, this is what we're looking to do, what needs to be put in place in order for us to be protected and things like that. If you don't have that, yeah, so don't go forward down some of these paths. So.
Yeah, I actually agree with that a lot, Jeff. I think building software is easy. It's where you maintaining software is really hard, right? So the first version is super exciting, and so you have that euphoria. I think anything, if you've never been in software development, right? Bug fix, security, documentation, all that stuff. And I think we're yet to see how that the AI race affects that, right? Because we're trying to keep pace. And also AI is taking off. So like that's where the real costs start to become. And all the points you brought up about security and my point about governance, I think is really tied into it. It's almost an afterthought, right? Right now it's expanded all costs, play around with these things. But I bet if you were to poll this group, Gemma, not many people know what the actual spend is for internally for their AI costs, right? At the individual team level. So there are some hidden costs that are going to come out of this in the future that we should be thinking about as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, a good point, Graham. And I'm curious how an organization could figure out what that was. Say for example, they knew what their CSP spend was. How would they figure out? And maybe this is something for Chad. Like, how did you figure out whether that would be a TCO argument for switching over, knowing what your token costs would be and things like that?
Yeah, it's a good, I mean, maybe how many times I hit the limit and ask for like an ex an extension of more credits.
Just say
So
don't
I
ask, just always approve, right?
well, it's not up to me. It's like it's controlled like centrally. So yeah, I think that we haven't gotten there yet, to be honest. But I think that like probably at most more formal organizations where they have like more structure that these discussions are happening. There's no question. Because I can see myself like blowing through all these different limits that we put in place. And that's just happened actually in the last couple of months. So I expect that, we'll be having that discussion very, very soon. And I'm sure others are having that discussion right now.
And Chad, you decided to build on top of like HubSpot as a layer, and you have built various things on Claude. In fact, the last webinar that we hosted for maintaining trust with AI, you shared the prompts that you use for a weekly report that gets sent to your CSMs to give them guidance on calls that they've had and customers that they should be focusing on. And I know since you've created many more agents. So at what point did you decide that it made sense to go down that custom route?
I think it was really out of necessity, because there wasn't like tooling that we had for that, and it
Mm.
was much easier to build something and stand something up, very quickly than to go and look and see like what vendor did this and what vendor did that. Um, and the reporting, it makes perfect sense. I think that if anyone has used HubSpot reporting, it has reporting just like every CRM, but everyone wants to customize it in certain ways that they want. And it really comes down to like, why wouldn't you use some, third-party tool like a Lovable or was it N8N? Like it makes complete sense. It's just so much easier and you can have the data, displaying exactly the way you want it in the order that you want it. So that's really what it came down to from a decision-making process. And also it was very easy. It's like easy to build. It was easy to maintain. It's easy to customize. You get feedback from your team and they want it in a certain way and you can just iterate. It's just made it so easy. And I'd say like very minimal cost, especially like when it comes to like those, like a third party, like a Lovable, it's a very small cost. You can get it set up, make customizations, and then just kind of move on to other things. I'd say that the heavier load is more on like the Claude where you're continue to test and iterate, and punch a lot of tokens, as you're working through everything.
What have you built in Claude versus Lovable?
Yeah, in Lovable, it's been more about reporting. And so like just across different areas. So like getting deeper on at risk, getting deeper on capacity, showing team goals, just a lot of the things around goals that you want to create in other tooling, but making it much easier. Like there's a specific tab here are the goals, it's broken down by individuals, and so that everyone in the organization can see, how we're performing. Versus Claude, where Claude is like creating things like, for example, like a handoff document between sales and implementation. You can create something that's really robust that, when a deal closes, it gets assigned to somebody, it creates this really robust document, talks about why they bought, what they bought, etc., and then creates a page and then DMs that, via Slack to that individual. And so it's just very easy to set that up, and iterate as you go.
And you can build a lot of agents with Claude as well too. I mean, I like to say, part back to your first question, Gemma, is like see what your platform has first. A lot
Hmm.
of people don't realize that your platforms have a lot of these things and see if it works for you. I've been in so many conversations where I was like, "What's your platform?" and they say X. I'm like, do you know you've got that available?" I've seen people ask for almost pay for like a 30K prospecting agent, not realizing that was part of their platform and stuff like that. So, but what I see the danger also in is whenever it's not in like the CRM, for example, because then you're talking about bringing two different data sources together, and that's where like the danger I feel comes in because that's when you have to start going into frameworks that probably aren't supported by everything that Graham and Josh has sort of brought up. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm reminded of this phrase that I used to hear when I first entered tech, like a million years ago. Um, it was no one ever gets fired for buying IBM. right? Because it was like considered the trusted vendor. They were going to have your back. They were going to fix things for you. It was going to take a really long time to get everything fine-tuned. So it was kind of like job security. But that turned into a bit of a joke over time. People were like, oh, if you're doing that, you're not actually innovative. You're not necessarily going to stand out from your competitors. And I almost feel like there is pressure right now for a lot of CS leaders to bring in AI solutions and try and build custom solutions when they could be better off working with their existing vendors. So I really resonate with that point you made.
Yeah.
And their workflows need to be set up first,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the processes, because that's the this is a very obvious statement, but that's the foundation of everything. In my role, I work for Gainsight, customer success company, but I'm working on some customer marketing stuff right now and working with some different vendors. And at the end of the day, like the stuff, I'm comparing two different tools, and it's not about the actual technology or the product. It's about the process that's underlying it. And in this case, the lack of process in a particular motion that we're building. So that's the real unlock, I think.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're
Josh.
so right, Josh, because we've deployed so many pieces of CSPs, and they think that the second you buy it, it fulfills their processes. And our first question is like, so what's your process? And they're like, wait, don't we just plug it in? No, like, what's your renewal process? What's your risk process? All the
Mhm.
playbooks and everything.
You didn't hear that about Gainsight, Jeff? We have a new product. You just plug and play.
I
It's
did
like
not know
day
that, but
day
I'm
two,
not
it's
up to
ready to
speed on the
go.
marketing. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I'll get my marketing agent on that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Josh brings up actually a really amazing point before he cuts me off. But like all of your employees are probably building these great workflows, but like the customer doesn't care about the sales AI workflow or the CS or the services. What they actually care about is the customer experience. And if you're building these things in silos or the back of your desk, or you don't have a review committee that kind of makes sure that your GTM experience is unified, that can become very disjointed. And I've actually been pitched a couple products that feel very disjointed. And when you ask that question of like, how are you controlling the customer experience, everyone kind of looks at themselves. So I think that is something that is also part of the governance is you really should be thinking about the experience as well. And I think Josh, potentially that's where a little bit you were touching on.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I address Matt Vidala's question
Yeah, go ahead.
so he asked, if you're building, quote unquote building, you have to explain why you put it in quotes there, Matt. But who owns the build? CS or engineering, IT, security, et cetera, et cetera. I'll share a little bit about what we've done at Gainsight. I mean, we ourselves have a buy and build and buy strategy. One of the areas that I spearheaded over the winter was building out a specific use case for us for instance reviews, for conducting, assessments of how people are using the platform, their environment, and their instance of Gainsight. And so it was a combination. I mean, basically, we established a Tiger team. Uh, it had some of our most experienced and more AI native CSMs, really the ones who were just like leaning in the most. And we all know we have pockets of those people in our organizations that we needed to have their feedback and have them tinker and play. But ultimately, we centralized the build on that in our revenue ops team, our CS ops specifically. And I actually, at the time, there's a guy by the name of Stephen Doty. He's got a myriad of different things that he's responsible for. He's very busy. But I did something that I'm actually in hindsight very, very kind of proud of. I said to him, Stephen, he doesn't even report to me, whatever. So I was just kind of like meddling in his business. But I was like, I want you to take this next week and do nothing but just build this thing. And he went heads down, focused for a week, and he got so much further along than he thought he would. And then he came back, and then we started to do these iterations with that Tiger team, with the CSMs as the knowledge experts, and him as the centralized builder, who's a little bit more technical. And he was working with IT as well to make sure that like the certain like data paths were opening up and whatnot. So it was an overall cross-functional effort, but it was with RevOps at the center. You could do it in different ways, but that's just one anecdote of how we accomplished that.
So with that approach, panelists, who maintains? Right, because
Mm.
I think that's the thing that when leaders and others come to me, it's like this is great, but who's actually responsible for it, right? So like I can speak for I just updated something that I built a year ago. It's been working fine. It needed updating. It's a year later. potentially I'm not the best person to continue to maintain these things.
Mhm.
So are we actually thinking about a structure, to Matt's point, question of like who builds is one thing, but who owns and maintains, right? So I can give a quick example. We have a client who basically built their own app store internally for the Claude skills, for the custom GPTs, because they were very worried about people forking things, taking their own versions of it, that then becoming back. So if you use Claude and you open it up to your call recordings, your Google Docs, your Slack, each one of those forks then becomes part of the seed data. And so how do you make sure that someone isn't actually getting further and further away from the message? And so I think you're starting to see these governance committees that are not just AI committees, but really trying to understand who builds, who maintains, and what is the repository for an organization. You're going to see a lot more of that, I think.
I've been
Yeah.
through this a bunch recently, so I can say once a lot of software companies get to a certain size, and Chad can fill me in because I'm not quite sure on where the Lovable fits in this particular situation, but when we think about, hey, this situation, we're pulling data out of a CRM, making a sort of a mashup of a couple different systems for support and customer success, and then it needed to be deployed, and we had to make sure all the problems that we already discussed weren't going to happen. Now, the CTO knew that this was a thing that was going to need to be deployed and that RevOps was going to have stuff, and then product marketing. So they built out essentially, a CI/CD instance with all of the things that you would need. So, hey, let's put a VPN in place to make sure that you can only access this inside of our environment. Let's make sure permissions are being, and so that's where I say prototype and then hand it over to the teams. That now the best case scenario where we're seeing a lot of the industry go for companies of a certain size is building out these frameworks where people can, like you said, deploy their applications into something that can just get dropped in. And you wind up just deploying code into GitHub, and then it gets pulled into containers and deployed essentially. I will say those are for more of your full builds. When you're deploying like the skills and all the Claude stuff, that's where I see things I've seen crazy things get out of control on that. And I have no idea the best way to maintain everybody creating their own, projects, and then they start exploding out and things like that. So,
What have you seen?
oh God, I mean, I was on a call last week. I think GM was there too. People were just showing, they were really trying to replicate, I think, sometimes like what a CSP or a CRM does inside of Claude, and projects starting to spider out, and where everybody, and I've seen this one with certain customers when we get brought in, where they're using projects to do everything, and then it's like a joint project shared throughout the organization. My brain just doesn't work like that, and so I don't know how people even. I've seen things that look very beautiful minded spread. It just turns into these massive graphs and chart. I'm trying to think. There was an exact thing I see in my head, but it's hard to describe. But it almost looked like a population map or something like that, where it just started exploding in size on the edges.
Yeah, I can talk to like what I'm experiencing here. So, what we're seeing is some of the leaders are building out prototypes, and then even some like individuals are building out prototypes. And then as we were talking about here, like how it matures over time. So we've recently moved somebody into like an AI operations type role. And what they do is they have taken, some of these different things, and they've created centralized skills and like a repository, and they've, now like standardized certain skills. So if a new person joins the team, here are some things they need to install. Here are some specific skills that are going to run. So, for example, there's one that will run and will go through certain channels and will highlight, certain areas that they should be aware of in terms of potential risk, and just some things that they need to respond to. There's like a wrap up at the end of the day, goes through their email, goes through Slack, like here's what you need to do. And so we try and standardize those. And I think, we also try and like weed some of these things out. I think where it's a bit challenging is, at times, like as the leader, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not working the way we want it. Like we need, it needs to include these other different things here. And then I think the other thing, unlike traditional software where you can actually track adoption, it's not really clear like who's actually using some of these tools. Are they actually effective? And are we just getting too much noise that's coming at us? So I think that's just another challenge.
Yeah, right. That, and then again, enforcement KPIs and things like that, right? An agent to make sure that people are using, because if you build stuff, people should be using. I don't like people spending time or budget to go deploy something and then nobody uses it. There has to be this is the way we're doing business. Like the classic, if you're in an office with your coworker, you turn around your computer and like, walk me through our base camp back in the day, or our CRM or our gain site or whatever. I'm going to go through your book of business. And that's how I get those things usually enforced. It's like, if you're the manager and you're opening up the application and walking them through it, and then, obviously change management and things like that. But yeah, it's huge.
One thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around still is how to measure value from these LLMs. No, I'm not talking about like the AI applications, but like we talk about, getting everybody, let's say, an enterprise license to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, and you want to increase adoption, of course, because it's going to create better outcomes, better quality, more productivity for folks. But I think there still is a gap on measuring the ROI in a real way. And I'm sure there's people that are doing it well. I just haven't come across that yet. So I don't know if any of you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, we can, in our organization, we can talk about time savings from, sales handoff to implementation to CS. Like we have actual stats on that. I also run, as part of my job, our services team. So I'm reviewing SOWs. I know the time before, after. And so what used to take me personally like 2 hours to fine tune and check an SOW, that's all being handled by the team with agents asking them the questions through the agent. And so now it takes me 10 minutes to review an SOW, right? So there's little pieces of the pie that you can start to handle. But I think that's genuinely something that you're starting to see. So I was at a client kickoff probably 6 weeks ago. They had just brought in a huge Claude subscription, and they basically were giving the employees 6 months to they were bringing in a consultant, they were teaching them how to use it. There was going to be specific KPIs linked into their performance, and so they're thinking about from day one to 6 months that they're expecting folks to fall into either three camps: I'm never going to do it, I get it, but I need help, or I'm accelerated, I'm off and running and doing stuff like Chad and Jeff and others are doing, right? Where their teams are actually, building these things and using them. And I think that's where you start to see the ROI, right? Is Josh getting smarter quicker? Is he more present? Is Josh able to make decisions quicker because he's able to distill all that information? So those little things are starting to build the picture in terms of return on investment and measurement.
Josh, the way we approach it, because we, a few months ago kept hearing everybody like, okay, we work with a lot of PE. We went to our PE, everybody got together, and they told us to use AI, and we had a Claude skills workshop, and they're like, what do we do? And I'm like, you should still approach this like a post-sales problem. What's your customer journey? Where are the choke points that you're currently, like, Graham mentioned, handoff from sales into implementation, get in project plans spun up and do. So you just find out where are the things that take the team the most time, and then make it easier. A QBR prep, okay, like that takes us a ton. We hear that a ton, right? That takes us a ton of time. Let's make that easier and things like that. So I that's how we usually approach it, is like, what are the things that are sucking up all the time that make you have to go bring another rec in that you
and are people, sorry if I missed this, Graham, but are people measuring like QBR prep? How many QBRs were prepped using my Claude prompting across my team over the past quarter?
We use it on basically on the handovers, Josh, in terms of like the timing and the quality of those handovers, right? So before we obviously could analyze. We had a great call recorder. We were able to analyze, how long those sessions were, the type of content that was going into the prep, and then the questions. In our case, our implementation team was asking, or our CS team. So then we were able to say, okay, if we were able to feed that back, what is the level of conversation that comes into those meetings? That's stuff that you can actually measure and see, right? Like number of questions from the person that is taking the handoff, whether it's from sales, whether it's from implementation to CS or support, and that's kind of how we started measuring it. Yeah, not a fine science, but it's getting better.
Yeah, you had a 30-minute handoff call for every deal that happened. And this is the champion, and this is the X, and this is the that, and this is that, versus just getting that handoff agent summary. The email gets kicked out, the project's built out already and everything like that. That's a very measurable time savings, I feel. Like QBR prep is a little, I think if you talk to the people who are doing it, they'll tell you for their enterprise customers, each one takes me days, or so this certain amount of hours, and we're being asked to do 2 a week and I can only do 1 because it takes so long. Like I feel the orgs that are doing those, especially when they've got enterprise customers and where that's a little bit more important, that's where they're seeing a lot of time savings in this as well.
Yeah, we're seeing just real quick to tag that, we're seeing time savings that are in measurable hours from turnaround from CSMs answering client questions, right? Because they can be apprised of, they can see the idiosyncrasies. We're on Salesforce, so a lot of configuration and permutations. Same thing with support, right? So we can have agents do all the checks. Do we have logins? Was there a customization to this specific field set? So all that stuff can be measured in minutes and hours in our organization.
And Josh, I'll give you one, since you'll appreciate this. If we go in and gather requirements for how people want to set up their CSP, and then we can put an agent against all the properties that and everything that's set up, they can be like, nope, you got to make sure that you get X, these 10 fields aren't coming over from the CRM. You got to make sure that those are coming in. Then if you want variance data from Snowflake to come, or whatever your thing is, then you got to make sure. So that saves a lot of time as far as I'm concerned on that element.
Yeah. Gemma, can I ask another question? I don't know how to answer questions. I only know how to ask them based on, the
It's
podcast and
okay.
everything.
I heard you have a few people following your podcast, so I'm totally fine.
Well, no, I literally don't know how to, I don't have a unique thought, so I only ask questions. But I want to know, where do you guys think, and this one is self-serving, but we talk a lot at Gainsight about headless UI, basically meaning like, where are people going to live in their products? Is it going to be in the actual platform? Is it going to be inside the Gainsight dashboard or HubSpot dashboard or whatever? Or is it going to be through the Claude MCP, or in their browser, right? Meet them where they are. Any predictions here? What are you guys seeing?
I'm a big fan of the headless, because every organization, where it makes the most sense, and you obviously have to do the build, and that's where you hopefully pulling everything over from MCP. But if you check those conditions, you know how to run your business, right? And you can go in and specify exactly what you're looking for, and it's not somebody in product management kind of doing a balancing act of after gathering requirements and balancing those out. So I think there are lots of companies whose business run in a unique way that they're better off suited in a headless UI where they're getting exactly what they're looking for. And, like people have meant, maybe you have a marketplace where you can pull in modules and things like that are pre-built and stuff like that. I see a lot of people loving that. Like whenever we whip up something and show them to them, they're like, yes, that. I'm like, well, this is just everything. Like, what do you really need? But people just don't like, having these UIs dictated to them by somebody who might not know their business, right? Like, payment companies run very much different than standard SaaS companies, and they need to see data in a much different way than usage data and stuff like that, right? So I'm just a bigger fan of that if you're able to sort of build out the headless. And this isn't, APIs have been around forever. It's just the ability to quickly prototype them and not have to fire up 6 months of Figma and then 6 months of dev to get something live. So
approach where we want to meet where the individual end users are, right? So whether that's in Slack, whether that's in Teams, whether that's back in HubSpot or Salesforce. And I think that's drastically easier, as Jeff said, to pull that together, to get the visual, to get the buy-in. Because at the end of the day, if you're selling a platform or a software package, you want users interacting with it, whether it's indirectly or directly. And so I think this new world gives us a lot of flexibility around that.
I'd agree with the comments on headless. I do think there needs to be very clear strategy from the top down when you're doing that, though, because what I'm also observing is a risk where people who are supposed to be spending their time with customers are spending their time trying to optimize their own UI.
That's, there's a point in time where you have to do what your company's business is. When we were at Bright Cove, just as an example, our whole business took off and we were able to go public because Android came out, and all the video teams on these broadcast companies said, that's it, I can't do this anymore, we got to work on our thing. We actually have to be a video company, not a video software company. I'm seeing that as well too here. I think anytime it's headless, you have to have somebody else own it and deploy it and follow those other things versus the Claude scenario, which I think is a lot different than the headless and the application that gets deployed.
Yeah, and I feel like we're talking about this concept of maintaining order being quite challenging when you go down the custom build route. Chad, I would love to know how you've um, changed your changed your program to put a little bit more order in place where you have so much that you're rolling out to your team.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that communication is always like really, really important.
Mhm.
But I think that like by a leader kind of building these things out, you're also inspiring your team to be thinking more broadly as well. And what I've seen is similar to what Graham was saying is that um, people will, some people will want to work within the applications, and other people will want to build like their own custom, applications that sits on top of other applications. I don't think these like core SaaS applications are going away. I think that depending on the size of the organization, there's still around security and making sure that things are secure. And I think that the main applications are obviously built for that. But I think that it's the new types of LMs and things that you can build. It's testing all of that in terms of the security wise. Like, what do you give people access to? With the idea of like, how do we make things easier? How do we provide the data or whatever it is that you want to update and make that part easier versus like the security so that we make sure that we lock things down, people change organizations, etc. But for me, like what I've done personally is just build something and then show others and say, hey, like this is what I built out. But what I love personally is that when someone's like, hey, like I love to see data in this particular way. So I want you to break down, show me like implementations by this cohort by this segment and what's the time to value, and I'm able to do that in literally 3 seconds, and then you can then drill down further, and then that gets people excited. They're like, oh, okay, that's neat. Like then they can see trends and they can see where the problems are, and then they can dissect it further. And so I think it's like what I would just recommend to people, because some people are like, hey, like where do I start? Like like there's all these things that you guys are throwing out, headless this, like where do I start in terms of maintaining? Um, Always think about what your problem is. Like, what is it that you're trying to fix? Like, don't just say, okay, I want to try and start using LMs and start learning. I think that's good, but always have a purpose. And it could be something really small. Like you want, like for me, it was how do my team's growing so rapidly. How do I provide them with coaching? And so that I can almost outsource that in a certain way to give them feedback when I can't necessarily do that on a daily basis. And I can even give them very specific snippets and links into the calls so that they can actually verify like what they're learning. And that's worked really well. And it's just iterated from there. And I keep experimenting. And I think that's a really good mentality to have.
Can I bolt on Chad a little bit here? Start iterative, start small. Don't try to chew off the whole elephant at once. Uh, Something related, and I'll share this right now in the Zoom chat. This article, if you should be following one company about their AI transformation, it's Gainsight. No, I'm just joking. We're doing good, but it's Ramp. Ramp is just like light years ahead of everybody else with the structure that they've created for their AI stuff. And so recently, I think it was like last week, they published this article, and it's really fascinating. It shows you the spend efficiency of the different models. So it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's related to what Chad's saying. Don't start with everybody being on Fable once it gets approved, right?
Yeah.
Or Opus 4.8 or 4.7, whatever we're on. But like, and I don't know if we're all in a position as functional leaders to control this, or you have to be at that CIO level. But I think that's something to be cautious of because there is a lot of spend drift or whatever you want to call it right now with the tokenization, token maxing. And so I think ultimately when we bring it back to budgets, just read this article and make sure that your team is doing the responsible thing, using the right models for the right activities. They're not all built alike.
Yeah, 100%. And then it begs the question, should your team be doing that, right? If there is so much risk in cost, is your team, is it worthwhile having a CSO team doing that?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like what should where should be they spending their time? Back to the headless thing. I mean, like we're all in on headless and like as far as like we launched like this command line interface and for applying AI with your Gainsight data and MCP, we're all MCP all the time type thing right now with our products. And so I was talking about this at an event about a month ago, lauding all those releases. And then somebody came up to me privately afterwards and they're like, Josh, I didn't want to call you out in the middle of this conversation, but I have to say, MCP, having this data in Claude for us to all use is great. But I just came back from a conference. I think it was like something like CIOs, and everybody was so paranoid that these LLMs are going to jack up the prices of tokens next
Mhm.
year, or just like AWS did years ago, just like Uber did, years ago. Uh, and so it's a risk having all of your activity inside of Claude, because once they do that, then they own you. And so that was really like eye-opening to me. I hadn't thought about that yet. I actually brought that back to the team to get their thoughts. But when you do the MCP, you're paying for that. It's on your account that you're paying for some of that logic. So he said he's like I'm humbly asking you to keep building within your platform as well, so that we have like the core stuff, keep innovating in there. Sure, like the fringe stuff can be going to the LLMs, like the headless, but keep on innovating within the core platform and dashboard and all those sorts of things. And I thought that was really interesting. So that's kind of also where we're building out this agent studio, so that people within the confines of our product can also have that, and then they're able to control their costs a little bit better.
Josh, that's a great point, and that's why when people have a platform, that's why I say maybe just write agents and remind. And
Yeah.
just so everybody's clear, agents aren't reports. Agents are things that will then go do something or tell you to go do something, right? Trigger off an event or an action, because that's where they start bringing a lot of value. And that's why, hey, it's like, yeah, I'm using Gainsight, but it's not getting me X, or I need something to know like that. Write an agent for that. In that way, you're not using up all of your tokens. If you want to build out your own headless X, Y, Z or whatever, yeah, you do the innovate, build it out, but then it's a deployable app that's just calling APIs, and that's nothing to do with tokens. But then you may have some agents in the background doing some intelligence work, but that's not powering the whole thing all the time.
Yeah.
It's people who I think are like you're saying, living inside of Claude and doing everything inside of Claude. That is a dangerous model, and the prices. I mean, I think I got an email this week that the prices are going up in Claude, right? So it's happening already. So yeah, great point.
Graham, as admin of your
Yeah.
of what you've built in Claude Code, I'm curious, have there been any weekends or evenings where you've been pulled in to fix
So
items?
we've taken a very liberal approach in terms of usage. So
Yeah.
we've I think this is a whole side story, but we did a 2-year rollout. We started with ChatGPT, we moved to Claude, brought
Okay.
in consultants. We are just last week had the conversation of at what point do we start to put some guardrails around this? So up
Mhm.
until now, we've taken within our organization the approach that as long as people are able to show that they're simplifying, tasks, or they're starting to automate on their own desk, we're going to be okay with that. I think the interesting part is because we dog food a lot of this and we sell into success and service leaders as well, we can actually use that in the product. So we're trying to figure out, can we use that as product development costs as well? But I will tell you, Gemma, after 2 years, last week was the first time we basically said, like, "Ooh, have we actually properly budgeted for this?" And so
Mhm.
now we're looking at it as a line item. Until then, it was open season, and obviously there's winners and losers. Some folks do more, some do less.
Can I randomly, Gemma, share what I think is a sleeper AI product out there that maybe not as many teams are taking advantage of
Oh.
right now? Notion. I've been using Notion personally for my book stuff, and I've gotten to know the Notion CS team, and they're all like Notion on Notion right now. And they've shared a little bit about what they're doing, and I think it's a great way to take some of that spend that you might otherwise incur through Claude. They've got actually like a very, very powerful, I think they actually power it through whatever you pick your model that you want to use. And then they have an agent builder inside. And so this is for maybe teams that are a little bit, smaller, that are still growing and maturing. Having that AI workspace with everything that horizontal tool can provide, I think that's a really cool platform right now.
Yeah, Josh, you just touched on the when does it make sense to build and when does it make sense to buy, right? Like that's a very encompassing platform that has millions of dollars of investment in, bringing things together, right? So you don't want to build all those components individually and maintain them. that's probably a great example for small teams where you would want to go out and purchase something.
Yeah. I put in the chat like Airtable's got something similar as well too. They have some very cool. They have a super or something. There's some great stuff out there. So oh
Yeah.
great. I actually just can't think any more about AI. I'm just really curious about this book. Josh, tell me more about the book. This is autobiographical. Is
You
this
can, Jeff, you
just
can
the
learn,
update?
you can learn at joshactor.com there,
Okay.
Jeff. I'll tease you with that.
What about
Okay,
Chad's
great.
book
Thank you.
too? Chad's got a book.
That's right. I can't.
I'm the only one without a book.
Chad, what's your URL?
Good point.
strategiccustomersuccess.com.
Nice.
There it is.
Graham, if you had a book, what would it be called?
Sitting on Long Island Sound on a 90-degree day.
Sounds like a Creed song.
.com.
.com.
I love that. Well, this has been a great conversation, lots of food for thought. I'd love to open it up to the audience for questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to come off mute and we will answer your question live. You can also add it to the chat and we will find it in there. All right, so I'm just going to have a look at what's coming through. So Catherine is making a comment here that AI is bringing CSM some time savings, but the data is equally creating serious exhaustion from information overload. I can agree with that. And Catherine goes on to say hard decisions need to be made as trade-offs. What are you doing to reduce unproductive activities in Gainsight, for example, that are manual, historic, or static?
I don't work at Gainsight.
Is that
Yeah.
for me?
Sounds like a Gainsight question.
I think it could be Gainsight or another company. Ultimately, what are you doing to reduce unproductive activities in your tech stack?
We actually experienced that. So we have a bunch of AI. So we started with the simple summaries in our organization. I now actually have a summary that goes on top of the summary because it was getting like really text heavy. I'm not a great reader. So we're fighting the same thing, Catherine, of like, how do we reduce some of that? And so you have to look at it through different lenses, in my opinion, right? There's the executive lens, there's the operator lens, and there's like the boots on the ground, respectfully, the hands on the keyboard, frontline folk. I think that oftentimes one of the mistakes is folks are building tools to answer all those angles, and that kind of leads to some of this bleed and overrun in information.
I can say for some of the things that we've built, there's distinct manager views versus there's persona building. So I'm a CSM, this is my book of business, I just need to see this. And then it's the next level up in the manager thing. But I think there's this other problem, and it sounds like what I think is actually being asked here is like, okay, there's Notion, there's Claude, there's Gainsight, there's this, there's my CRM, there's there's Lovable, and then suddenly it's like, oh my God, which is kind of why I just go back to, and Chad had said this as well, what's the biggest problem you're trying to fix right now, right? And attack it that way. And if you can't figure out what the solution is, I'm sure somebody in your organization has an opinion on it, so.
I feel like you're waiting for me to answer the question,
We are.
Gemma.
We are.
But I don't have I don't actually have a good answer, so I don't want to BS my way out of it. To be totally honest with you, I don't. Maybe I don't understand the question fully, but I don't want to give some contrived response.
All righty, Chad, anything to add to Catherine's query?
I don't think so. I think just one thing is that like what I have done maybe along the same lines is not just relying on the functionality of your CRM, and how you can augment that with, an LLM data. So for example, with a health score, you can use an LLM to compute that. And whether you do that long term or you just do it, temporarily, but you can create a really sophisticated health score, and then, pump that into your CRM. And you can control that and make sure that it doesn't become, essentially fluff and additional information. So just keeping it like limited and controlled. That way you keep things clean and effective.
Yeah, awesome. Catherine, hopefully that gives you some ideas to take away. But if you would like to add more context to the question, we will continue to provide some more thoughts. For now, I'm going to move over to Lawrence, who asked a question. And hey, Lawrence, congrats on your new gig. It was great seeing you in Vegas as well. Lawrence is asking, what are you seeing people do as far as truly agentic autonomous business ownership? E.g., not helping people prepare for QBRs, but agents for things like outsourcing long tail renewals or outsourcing long tail CS motions. Are you seeing those kinds of autonomous agents gain traction?
Yeah.
Great question.
I see Jeff nodding his head too. I think we probably share the same thought on this. Yes is the answer.
Yeah. There's two agents that we do a lot of that when I bring up in a standard conversation, people are like, wait, talk to me more about that. And it's the inverse of everything we're talking here with risk and prevention. It's the white space agent, right? Again, this is why I don't see a lot of these in the enterprise, because everybody's white space methodologies is a little bit different. But where's my upsell? Companies that looked like this upsold, so find more companies look like this. And then again, creating alerts. It's not reports. It's sending a Slack notification out to the person who's responsible for this and saying, here's a hot list of 10 companies that are great to go after right now for, or getting a CSQL and getting the AE back into the conversation or something like that. So that, and I'm also seeing, and Gemma, I think your opinion on this is probably more valuable than any of ours, is I'm seeing digital customer success just being like overtaken by all of this right now. Like it's the next version. And I wish this stuff was out, a couple of years ago when I was working on digital customer success stuff.
Yeah, happy to. And Jeff, I think Lauren's question from my perspective is more about an agent doing the reach out. So not like a Slack to notice to tell us the
And I feel digital is
Yeah, I agree with that as well, Jeff.
Yeah. I can certainly share some perspectives. So ultimately at Atlassian, we have Rovo, which is our own AI functionality. And Rovo is our teammate. Genuinely, we have more agents in our digital team than we do people, and we rely on it for everything, from finding the right content to scaling it. It's incredibly helpful because it's connected with our own internal Confluence, Loom recordings, Jira tickets. So it runs on an amazing piece of context as well. And then we have our own studio where we can go and build agents for the various different tasks that we're doing behind the scenes, both as CSMs and as digital operators. Now, our stance is always, let's drink our own champagne as much as possible, but also partner with best-in-class vendors where they can provide solutions that are going to have a rapid deployment, low maintenance, and not compete with our core product set. So one example that we are working on for the long tail is partnering with Gainsight on a adoption agent that will take similar high touch motions that we have for customers with CSMs, but have an agent behind them determining who to reach out to and what to reach out to them with, and also responding to that customer with the right information with an escalation path to a human when needed. That is something that we're very excited to start piloting with the Gainsight team.
As are we, Gemma. Thank you for that organic plug there. This is a top 2 priority for Gainsight, the autonomy of using agents, particularly for renewals and expansion, upsell, and for adoption. Those are the 2 most obvious use cases. And when you do something that's truly agentic, truly autonomous, you want to map it to outcomes. So it's much easier to map renewals to outcomes and and then price based on that, right? So we're also going through this kind of like strategic transformation of how do we want to price in this new agentic world, and then adoption as well. You can measure those things, and so yeah, this is like we know this is where the future is, and we're doubling down on agentic long tail solutions that are truly autonomous. Lawrence knows that. Lawrence also he asks me to introduce him to more digital CS leaders than anybody else so that he can learn from them. And yet he is probably the most knowledgeable, and Gemma, most knowledgeable, like long tail CS leaders that I know. But I think that's because he's always picking the brains of other people that he's amassed his knowledge base. So thank you, Lawrence, for bringing that up.
Yeah, great question, Lawrence. And Graham, did you have something to add on a like fully agentic, proactive approach?
Yeah, I did, but I actually have seen some interesting questions come in. There's a couple open ones. The thing that I would also think about from a digital perspective is from a leadership perspective, right? You only hear about the things that kind of bubble up. So as
Mhm.
nice as a long tail is, it also goes the other direction for leadership. So I'm finding these agents and digital CS touch actually helps me head things off quicker because there's just a lot more visibility into that long tail, right? Whether it's CS, whether it's services, whether it's support, being able to see that before it starts to push up and becomes a problem where I have to jump on a call and pacify or help out has been tremendously important and beneficial within our organization.
Can I tell you my pipe dream, Graham, for like from a
Yeah.
product perspective of we're not doing this at Gainsight, right? But maybe one day. I was coming from the update AI background, right, with like analyzing customer conversations, but it was like one to one. This is high
Hmm.
touch activity. I want to be able to use like all the agentic autonomous stuff to analyze all of the responses at the long tail of
Yeah.
those conversations, right? So when the agent is doing like these serial calls or getting all the emails, I want the trends and patterns from those thousands or 10,000s of conversations that it's getting, then for that to bubble up to the leader like yourself to see those patterns of our long tail, which I don't think, the sentiment of our long tail, which I don't think we've had access to before. So it's not currently on the roadmap, but
No,
that's
that
just my
that
own
is actually
personal.
that's super useful, right? Because there's just so much information there, and I think that kind of ties to some of the questions that are coming in is like, what do you do with that data to influence? And like that's a whole nother conversation, but the way we're using it at each step, whether it's from outbound to first inbound, all the way through the sales process, we're using it to then seed conversations, right? So you can get the spoken word, you can pull it out of agents. There's just some tremendous stuff that's going on in this space, and definitely a timely topic. But yeah, go build that, Josh. I'll help.